Good morning, good morning. We are live on this beautiful Wednesday in April. Gonna wait until chat starts populating real quick. How's everyone doing this morning? This is Board Gaming Breakfast hosted by the McMeeples. For those of you who are new to the channel, and what we're doing here is we like to go live every weekday morning around 8 a.m. to talk about a game that's been on our mind lately, and then we like to do a couple brainstorming exercises to get those creative juices flowing to start the day off on the right foot. So without further ado, let's get into today's game of the breakfast. So the game we brought today to the table is Century Golem Edition. This is by far one of my favorite games to introduce new players into the game hobby to. One of the reasons why I enjoy it so much is this right here is the rules, and there are 4 actions you can do in the entire game, so there's not a lot of rules overhead for you to work through. On a turn, you can either collect gems, which these gems also are great because they're nice, big, and chunky, and a great feature to introduce new players into what gaming can be in this space. But the 4 actions you can do on a turn is you can collect gems by playing a card. So you can I'll pull out some of the cards here, but you can either play a card from your hand, you can pick a card from the market row, you can reclaim all the cards that you've played, or you can cash in gems to buy a golem. And those are the 4 actions you'll be taking throughout the entirety of the game. And so with a game that streamlined and simple, my favorite part about the game is the fact that everyone will get this little resource board. So this is your cart, and this is how many gems that you can hold within the game. And I think that's such a unique design constraint because you're able to, you just can't collect gems endlessly, and you have to manage how many gems you're going to hold on to, and it makes you have to plan accordingly, where I can't play this 4 yellow gem card if I only have 3 resources like spaces in my cart available, because then I'm going to be wasting and losing a gem. And so I think that is such a fun design constraint in Century Golem. There's also Century Spice Road, which is the same game. It just has more simplified components. I believe it's just cubes instead of these nice big chunky gems, and the art is more of trading on the Mediterranean as opposed to these big creative friendly giants, or I guess golems in this case. And so to recap, my favorite part about this game is the fact that you are limited to the number of resources you can hold at any given time. And so that is today's game of the day, is Century Golem. My favorite mechanic of it is the confined resources that you can hold within your cart. And I also enjoy it as my go-to intro to gaming game to introduce people into the hobby, because there's only 4 things you have to think about. Am I going to play a card this round? Am I going to select a new card? Am I going to collect all the cards that I've played because I want to play that 4 gem card again? Or am I going to cash in all of my gems to get a golem card? And so you'll be doing one of those 4 actions throughout the entirety of the game, and the game will end depending on the player account once the amount of golems has been collected by 1 player. So in a 2 to 3 player game, I believe it's 6, but 4 or 5 players, you need to collect 5 golems to trigger the end of the game. And once that happens, you'll play an even number of rounds, and then you'll add up the score of the golems to see who got the most points. So that is our game of the day, Century Golem. And so what we like to do in the breakfast after we talk about our game of the day is we like to go to our wheel of mechanics and add a random mechanic into the game of the day. And so the purpose behind this exercise is to not be prepped on what we have to design around and just wing it to get all the ideas on the paper. And so we have closed economy auction as the mechanic that we have to add into Century Golem Edition. So we got closed economy. Got closed economy auction is what we're going to be designing around. And for those of you who haven't been part of this segment of the breakfast before, what we're going to do is we're going to pull out our timer and set it for 5 minutes, and we will see how far we get in the brainstorm of getting this this closed auction into Century Golem. So without further ado, we're going to start the timer, and what we are going to do now is we are going to ideate how we might get a closed economy auction into our game of the day, Century Golem Edition. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this mechanic, a closed economy auction is where there isn't an unlimited amount of money. And so QE would be a good example in the gaming space of a open economy auction where the money is made up and is unlimited. So I feel like that would tie right in with our market or our storage cards. So we got our storage cards here with the 10 spaces, and potentially when any time that somebody cashes in on a golem card, that would trigger an auction. And so say this needs a blue, a yellow, a red, or pink, and a green, and is worth 10 points, you would then be able to bid how many spaces that you're no longer going to hold gems on in the game to be able to outbid somebody for the golem that they are trying to bid. And so I believe how the game would work is, say, player 2 that we're playing with is looking to cash in on this golem here for 3 green and 2 yellow. Then the open bidding would go to, well, I'll give up 3 green gems to prevent Sam from being able to select this card. Or the next player would be like, I'll give up 3 gems and I'll cover one of my action spaces to hold gems so I can't hold the rest of the game. And you would go around until lost my train of thought there. I don't know if that's a fun idea. So closed economy auction. This is a tough one to add into such a light game. Maybe we'll focus on, so in the game there is a market row. I believe there's 6 cards that are up for people to purchase. And so when somebody wants to pass on a card, so maybe that's how we do it. So at the beginning of the game, before you've played any cards, you would deal out maybe 10 to 15 cards, depending on the player count. So say there's 2 players, you'll deal out 10 cards, and then there'd be an auction system on all 10 to start the game. So you'd start with 7 cards total, because I didn't show at the beginning, but there are starter cards that everyone gets of, so everyone would always get these 2, I'll go to full screen. They would get these 2 cards regardless, everyone starts the game with. And what would happen at the beginning of the game, there would be 10 cards dealt for a 2-player game to, we got Michaela in chat. So a closed auction with Century Golem definitely seems interesting since the mechanic is acquiring cards, either for free or using gems. Yeah, so that was sort of what triggered my brain to think that you'll shuffle and deal out, say, 12 cards per, so 6 per player, and then each person would get 10 gems to start with the game. And so what you would do is it would go around the table and you would bid how many gems this card is worth to you. And so say the first player would be like, oh, I'll spend 2 of my 10 gems. And it goes around and the next person's like, oh, I'll do 3. Oh, I'll do 4. And so the player that paid 4 gems would get this card for the game, and then they would only have 6 cards or 6 gems left in their little market board to bid on at the beginning of the game. And then once everyone runs out of gems, you would just be dealt out maybe 3 or 4 more cards randomly till everyone has 7 cards in their hand. And then it would simplify the rules slightly, because then throughout the course of the game, you would only have those 7 cards. So we have 3 here, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that would be the 7 cards that you have to play the entire game with, and you wouldn't be able to trade out cards or do anything like that. And I don't know if anyone heard that, but that was the timer going off. So to recap, the game of the day that we're talking about is Sentry Golem Edition, and our goal is to add a closed auction type of system to the game. And so we started with trying to do an auction for when people would be buying the Golem cards, but that kind of hit a dead end quickly. So in the last 2 minutes, we pivoted, and to recap what we had come up with is at the beginning of the game, you would shuffle up the market deck and deal out 5, and that would be the order that people are bidding on. So say these are the 5 cards that started in the market row. You would then start the auction before even the game begins. And so it would be a closed auction where everyone starts with their 10 gems, or maybe it ended up being 12. We'd have to play test to figure out what the right number is for bidding. But you would go around the table bidding on the first card in the market, and once everyone is passed, the highest bid would get that one, and then you'd start another auction, and you would keep going around until everyone is out of gems, and then you would just get dealt around the table the remaining number of cards that you need till everyone ends up with 7. So you would have 2 cards that you start the game with in normal Sentry Golem, and then you would have 5 more cards added to your hand, which you have the closed auction to bid on which ones you want immediately. And once you run out of gems for currency, you would be randomly dealt new cards that you'd have to work around with as well. And we could make the rule that the gems that you don't end up spending in the auction are the ones you start with in the game, and then you would play a normal game of Sentry Golem. And so how I would test this is the next time we played Sentry Golem, I would ask the table if they were up for a closed market bidding system to start the game with, and I would, without changing any other rules, I would do what we just explained of getting 10 gems at the start to bid on the cards that you would start with, and then once that is over, just play a completely exactly the same version of Sentry Golem where you still have all 4 actions so that the market is still open for you to pick from throughout the game, but it would jumpstart your engine to potentially have a direction that you're going. So if this is what I ended up with, I probably like the fact that these 3 cards, based on the 2 that I have here, I can play a 2 yellow gem to then convert those 2 yellow into 2 green, and then I can get 2 more green, and I can immediately spend 3 of those green. So it's I kind of already got that synergy going with my engine instead of having to start the game off slower, picking different cards from the market and not really producing those engines to get the golems. So that is the wheel. The Wheel of Fate decided that we needed to add the closed economy auction to the gameplay, and so that's what we ended up with. Feel free to leave in the comments below, either of the live cast or when this is rebroadcasted, what your thoughts are, and follow along if you enjoy these type of brainstorming exercises. So the last thing we have to do for the meal is we will pull up our game generator. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we like to finish off this board gaming breakfast with generating a random board game prompt for us to design. So we have up on the screen, let's make a game.net, and they have this awesome tool which will generate a random game for you to design around. It's sort of tailored more towards video games, but we're going to make it work. And so what it will provide for us is a genre, a rule, a setting, and a theme for us to design around. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to click the generate button. So we have a top-down shooter is the genre. The rule is everything has a cost. The setting is another planet. And the theme is patriotism. So we will clean up our workspace really quick by getting all of these cards out of the way. And then I will explain what we will finish off today's breakfast doing. So I got a lot of cards, kind of threw them everywhere. That was not really planned out. But we will quickly reorganize these after. But we'll get them off to the side. Alright, enough dilly-dallying. So we have our top-down shooter, everything has a cost, another planet, and patriotism. So what we're going to do is reset that 5-minute timer, and we will see where we get after the 5 minutes for a game concept. So we are off. So top-down shooter, feeling like there is some sort of top to the game, and everything has a cost, another planet, and patriotism. And so my first instinct is that we have some sort of main board, and everything has a cost to it. And so what we're doing is, the first thing I'm kind of thinking of is Galaxy Trucker, but wanting to add a little less randomness to it. So we have the main board here, and we have everyone's little spaceship board because we're trying to get to the other planet. And so we're trying to plant our flag because patriotism. And so for those of you who aren't new here, I am from America, so that we get the nice American flag. We got Michaela in chat saying feels like a dudes on the map game, maybe area control, maybe humans versus aliens or something. Maybe that is where we're going to work out to. My initial thought was that everyone has their little spaceship board, so we'll do a little crudely drawn spaceship. Pew pew. And so we got our spaceship board, which holds potentially a bunch of different powers. And there is 3 tracks that you're trying to balance. You got your money, your fuel, and your power that have little cubes on them that maybe start at, depending on setup, there's a variable setup, so you're balancing these 3 resources, and everyone at the start of the game will draft and select these 6 or 7 one-time power, maybe 6 one-time powers, and each board has an asymmetrical power to it. What do we got in chat? So Michaela says, oh, country versus country, that would be interesting. Like Scythe in space, LOL. Michaela's feeling very creative today in chat. My thought was that potentially there are a randomly dealt out amount of tiles that are seeded in the game, and on each player's turn, or at the start of the round, everyone will blindly be placing their or moving their spaceship token to an area, and that will reveal a event at the end of the round that people have to navigate and deal with. So you are trying to balance your money, fuel, and power to be able to get to the, or be first to the end zone to plant your flag. And so the thought I had was that there's potentially a card that gets flipped that has a cost to it, and you would have maybe 3 different options. One that gives you a benefit, one that gives you no benefit, but you go through the asteroid field or the environment as like a neutral, where you don't take damage to your ship, and then one that you'd pay the cost of, like one is the punishment, I guess. So we got, where are we at right now? We have 49 seconds to try and flesh this out. And so the goal of the game is to be the first to get to the planet, and so um, everyone selects the start is here, and you do your movement on, everyone selects tiles that they want to move on. The tile backs are probably color coded, where it's like, okay, this one, like to indicate what type of event it will be. So we got different event types on the back. So maybe this one is like an asteroid field, and then this one is potentially a foreign enemy ship, and this one is some sort of jumping portal. And so those are seeded. The timer's gone off. So I'll finish that thought here, and then we'll recap where we got to in this 5-minute brainstorm. And so the main board is seeded at the beginning of the game with a bunch of different random tiles that have uh, a little hint on what the event might be. And so there's different invaders that would be trying to prevent you from getting to their planet. There'd be asteroid fields. There would be other, unidentified objects. And so there would be a bunch of those different tiles with the same uh, style background, so you couldn't tell which type of event you're running into. And so once everyone has selected the tile that they want to go on, and you can be on the same tile as someone else, then you would reveal it, and it would have a cost associated to it, that if you pay the cost, you would gain this benefit of the tile. If you paid half the cost, this would be like the cost you pay to not take damage. And then if you choose to ignore everything, this would be the punishment that you'd have to face. And so the turn structure would work as before the game starts, everyone would be drafting their asymmetrical powers that give you different abilities based on the event that you're running into. And once everyone has drafted their 6 powers, then the potentially each one would give you a bonus resource to manage. And what the kind of core function turn loop would be, everyone moves onto a tile or orthogonal to where their ship was previously, and then you would reveal the event. You would then have to choose to pay the cost or face the punishment, and you would do that round after round until all of the ships have been destroyed or there is one ship that has made it to the planet. And that is where we got to for this game prompt in the 5 minutes. The way I would get this from concept to playtesting is I would have to craft the tiles that we would be, or the events, so the backside of doing different costs or benefits and punishments associated to the tiles, and come up with maybe 4 different types of tiles and come up with the asymmetrical power tiles. And I would probably do the same style format where I would give myself maybe a 20-minute time window to come up with each one, at least for like the writing portion of it. I would then spend an hour to get the graphics to make it presentable to somebody that isn't inside of my head, so that the idea could be communicated on the tabletop. And then I would probably bring it into Tabletop Simulator and bombard my friends and my fiance Michaela to browbeat them into testing this concept to see if it's fun. And I wouldn't focus too much on the asymmetrical, so I wouldn't focus on balancing the economics of the 3 different resources yet. I would just see if this style of, uh, you know, having some agency to choose where you flip, and then flipping and trying it out to see if that core system is fun at all. And so let me know in the comments below what you think of this idea, if it's something that sounds like a fun game to play, or if you have ideas of your own on how to do a top-down shooter that everything has a cost on, with the setting being another planet and the theme being patriotism. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoy these type of breakfasts. I go live every Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. But I'm happy to, if anyone is interested in joining as a second designer in these spaces, reach out to me, and I'm happy to shift the schedule around to see if we can make something work. So with that, I hope everyone has a great work day, and I hope to hear from you guys soon. Bye-bye.